We could talk until the cows come home about current events, couldn't we, David? But if we are going to stand a chance, I think people need to know and understand more about who we are and why we're here. And I know they're the biggest questions of all, but if I'm going to throw that out to somebody, it's going to be you. So who are we and why are we here?
Well, I'm just finishing a book actually about all this. Nearly completed it. What has happened, in my view, and I've been on this case, this particular question, for 30 years or more, is that we've been given a false self-identity on purpose to make us feel that we are powerless, we are limited, and there's nothing we can do to impact upon our lives, really. And the way they've done it is to convince us that human is all we are. Because, you know, we have multiple levels of consciousness operating at different levels. And the way that we directly interact with this world is through the five senses. And, you know, the great majority of people live their life through the five senses alone. It's everything to them. They process reality. They process everything from that perspective. But that's only one part of us. But if you are going to manipulate and oppress to the point where people don't push back against oppression, don't even think it's oppression often, then you have to put people en masse in a tiny bubble of A, perceived reality, and B, perceived self-identity. And so what you want to do is to get them to self-identify the I with this long list of labels that we're given and give ourselves. So man, woman, income bracket, job, race, religion, all these different labels, sexuality now, these are given to us to self-identify with, when what they actually are very, very brief experiences. I mean, I'm coming up to 70. I know how brief life is. It was like I was at Crown Hill School in Leicester yesterday, and I left in 1967. So it's a very brief experience. But what the game is to convince us that that's all we are. Because once you self-identify with those labels, you are immediately, first of all, self-identifying everything with the five senses, because that's the realm that those labels operate in. And secondly, you are putting people in a sense of limitation, a sense of I can't, a sense of powerlessness, a sense of, well, how can you change anything? It's just too big. And what you're seeing, and because, you know, we live in two worlds. There's the world of what I call the global cult, which is a global network of secret societies. And it's secret for a reason. It's keeping secrets from the population. And of course, it's keeping secret as best it can, although the cats and bags are parting company at the moment, of where it's taking the world. But crucially, it has to keep from the mass of the population that question you ask: who are we? What the hell is this place? Because if we knew the full scale of who we are and the full magnitude of what we are, then we wouldn't be easily manipulated and oppressed and suppressed as we are. So I'm not talking about Bill and Joe down the lodge. I'm talking about the inner core of this cult. This knowledge of what reality is and how it all comes together, how our perceptions become our experience, how we are actually creating our own reality through our perceptions, that's all kept from us, has to be. And so what they've set up in our world is a programming operation from cradle to grave through the bravely called education system and the media, the mainstream media and government and all the rest of it, which and science, what we bravely call science, and academia and medicine. And if you look at them, some cutting edge, proper scientists, proper doctors, proper academics aside, and they are few, they're basically reading you the script that you are your labels. That's what science is telling you overwhelmingly. You know, you come out of nowhere, you have this brief experience, and then you go into nowhere, life's a bitch, and then you die. You are just your labels. So the more that they can focus our attention and our self-identity in the five senses through these self-identity with labels, the more they're pulling our focus, our point of attention, out of the expanded awareness that we are, which can give you a totally different fix on the world, and into this five sense myopia. And what they're doing systematically, this is a big part of what's happening with the woke thing, though that's, of course, there's many aspects to that. They are subdividing the previous labels, if you look at them. You look at these long list of letters now that are there to provide a self-identity for people, down to the fine detail of their sexuality even. This is taking the previous association with labels down into greater and greater and greater myopia. And with every step down, the IMRs, as I call them, the phantom selves, gets more and more limited and focused on smaller and smaller labels, and the further and further away you're getting from expanded levels of consciousness, because you're simply not connecting with it, because your focus is here. And, you know, what's been encouraging, I think, for me, well, it's not I think, it has been, is the number of people I've heard in maybe the last 6 months saying it's a spiritual war, isn't it? Now, I don't like the word war. It has connotations, but I get what they're saying. They're starting to realize that if you just sweep back all the forms, the labels, the things, the bodies, the races, and all of it, the elite and the oppressed, you sweep it all back. And throw in extraterrestrials and all that as well. Sweep all that back as well. And what you're left with is behavior resulting from states of consciousness. Perception becomes behavior. Perception comes from your state of consciousness. So the difference between those running this global cult and your Schwabs and your Gateses and all these people, and deeper ones, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and deeper than that, they are of a certain state of consciousness. That's why they do what they do. And the population, in its various forms, acts as they do because of their state of consciousness. So if you look through this period we've been through, you have two groups of people that have allowed it to happen. And those two groups of people are two particular groups of consciousness. One group just does what it's told without question, what I call press enter people. It doesn't question anything. It rolls up its sleeve. It does what it's told. And then you've got the next group, which is a slightly different consciousness, sometimes more than slightly different consciousness, but it's still in that level of awareness that succumbs to fear. So that consciousness, that second group, can see some of what's happening. It doesn't want to do what it's told to do, but it does it anyway because it's frightened of not doing it. Those two groups are what have allowed the last 2 years to happen. They've allowed every tyranny in history to happen. And the third group, which is a completely different state of consciousness, is one which can see it, or at least to an extent, doesn't want to do it, and therefore doesn't do it. And that's the group that's overthrown every tyranny in history.
Why are people at different levels? If you want to class it as levels, I mean, it's quite interesting the way you're putting it, because it almost sounds like a bit of a game as well. Like you're at different levels of the game. Why are people however you want to frame it, at different levels, or why are people at different levels of consciousness? Why is that?
I mean, this is very straightforward. You know, one of the reasons that people give their power